Today we continue with our NHL offseason review series, and we're now moving on to the Central Division, and we're starting with the Colorado Avalanche. We're going to analyze their trades, expansion draft loss, who came in, who went out, are they a better team, worse team, or about the same? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're continuing on with our NHL offseason plan review series, where we're taking a look at all the moves that these teams have made throughout the trades and free agency period, expansion draft hits and all that, and trying to determine if they've met their objectives. Are they going to be a better team, a worse team, or where do things stand going into the next season? And when it comes to the Avalanche, what was their real main objectives going into this offseason? They knew they had some big-time unrestricted free agents that they had to try to keep if they could, to try to keep this team moving forward. They also had a big RFA in Cale Makar that needed a new deal, and they still want to have that window open to compete for a Stanley Cup, because the last 2 years they've been considered one of the top contending teams for the Cup, but have fallen short. They can't seem to get past Vegas, and that's what they really need to work on here, is taking that next step. So what have they done to try to accomplish that? Well, first up, let's take a look at trades that they've made. Now, when it comes to trades, they made a trade league into the expansion draft because they were concerned over losing a defenseman. They knew that with the way the rules were with protecting players, they were probably going to lose a pretty decent D-man. So they traded Ryan Graves, even though they probably didn't really want to, over to the New Jersey Devils. Maltsev comes back the other way. So Graves goes off to the Devils organization. Pretty good pickup for them on a rebuilding team where he can probably get a bigger role, more ice time, and still be a real solid guy for them. And then, of course, the Avalanche get a younger player with a cheaper contract coming back the other way. After expansion, they also picked up another defenseman from Seattle, which was Curtis McDermott, in exchange for a fourth-round pick. So they lose McDermott. So they lose Graves and trade to the Devils, which obviously they probably wouldn't have done if it wasn't for expansion. But then from Seattle, they pick up another physical defenseman here as well. So obviously, not the exact same defenseman, but still a guy who's really big and physical and can play a similar type of role at a cheaper cost. So it's the best they could do with that situation. And really overall, I must say, I think Joe Sakic handled things relatively well considering all things. And of course, later into free agency, due to necessity, they suddenly found themselves without a starting goaltender because all the UFAs could not be retained, and they made a trade with the Arizona Coyotes for Darcy Kuemper in exchange for Connor Timmins and a first-round pick and another conditional pick. So they had to give up a pretty substantial value there to get Kuemper, but they became fairly desperate after the goalie market started to dry up. They couldn't retain Grubauer, and they saw an opportunity here with one of the few goalies left on the market via trade, and Arizona wanted a good haul, and they got it in return. So those are your trades heading into this offseason. And of course, during actual expansion, they didn't lose a defenseman, but instead they lost a pretty good forward in Jonas Donskoy. So they still, get a pretty good secondary scorer from our middle six, gone to expansion here as well. So as much as they didn't want to lose a defenseman, they probably didn't really want this to happen either. But when it came to the trade market and what they could do for protecting players, they could only protect so many guys, and it kind of became the lesser of two evils. Trading Graves, who had probably more value than Donskoy, just made a little bit more sense at the time. But so that's all your deals in expansion draft implications in that regard. Now, what else have they done? Who else did they bring into this organization? And who has gone out is kind of what we need to analyze next. Well, as far as coming into the organization, obviously, like I said, they have a new starting goalie in Darcy Kuemper. Obviously, that was a huge piece after losing Grubauer, which we'll talk about here momentarily. Other players that are new to the organization include veteran defenseman Ryan Murray, who gets a one-year deal at $2 million. And they also brought in Darren Helm, formerly of the Detroit Red Wings as well. Now, of course, these guys can kind of replace some of the pieces they've lost, but they're the only ones that were really new to the organization on the free agent market. But they did have some pretty substantial signings in-house to kind of keep some of these guys in the fold here. So we get defenseman Cale Makar kick things off with a massive RFA deal, 6-year deal at $9 million per season. I think longer term, that's going to look like a pretty good value. Makar is a very dynamic defenseman and kind of set the tone for a lot of the defenseman contracts. But certainly based on some of the UFAs getting even more money, that's really only because UFA years tend to be more valuable from that aspect than RFA years because they're controllable assets. Now, before we jump into the remainder of the Avalanche offseason, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge one of our channel sponsors, SJSTerritory Smart Wallets. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by SJSTerritory. Forbes calls SJSTerritory the most successful smart wallet brand in the world. They certainly have high-quality products, high-grade leather. You can put all your cards in your wallet with RFID protection, and you can track it worldwide. That's the best part. You don't have to worry about losing your wallet and not being able to track it down. They have a great selection of products to choose from here, a variety of colors and styles, something to surely help for everyone. As you can see in the demonstration here for the product I have, this is a beautiful packaging, high quality. When you open it up, you get a high quality wallet with lots of slots for your cards. You have yourself a money clip if you want to carry cash on you here as well. And certainly, as you can see, the quality is outstanding. And here you can see the switch where you can help open up your cards. You just one little click and boom, everything fans out right in front of you. Easy to access. Your cards are protected. And here's the back where you have yet another slot. A terrific overall product, and I can't recommend these enough. SJSTerritory ships worldwide, and you can check out the link down below in the description as well as the pinned comment to buy yours today. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I appreciate that, as well as all the other support we've received on the channel lately, including several super thanks. So thank you for that. Let's jump back into the Avalanche offseason. Of course, it came right down to the wire when it was last almost not eligible anymore to get an 8-year deal, but they got it done with Captain Gabriel Landeskog. 8 years at $7 million per season. That got personal, it got complicated, it became a very stressful negotiation for both sides, but at the end of the day, they found common ground and they get it done. That was absolutely huge. Now, out of all the guys that needed new deals here, I always felt Makar and Landeskog were the more likely ones to get it done. Of course, with Makar being an RFA, it was the most likely. But of utterly all the UFAs, between Landeskog, Grubauer, Brandon Saad, Landeskog is the most important piece, the team captain, and really, if it meant losing the other guys and getting him done, I really felt that's what was going to happen, but things were not looking good there for quite a while when it come to Landeskog. There was a lot of days where it looked like the odds of him leaving were certainly getting more and more likely, but at the 11th hour, they got the deal done. They also signed younger forward Tyson Jost as well on a 2-year deal at $2 million. So they did a pretty good job at retaining players, but they couldn't keep them all, and they did have to lose some. So as much as a team who had a lot of regular season success, a moderate amount of playoff success, but not as much as they were hoping for, there was substantial turnover. We've already talked about a lot, but of course going out includes Philip Grubauer, who gets a hefty contract from the Seattle Kraken, just way more money than Colorado was able and willing to spend on his services. So he goes to Seattle. That's a great pickup for them to really solidify their goaltending. So of course after that, they were able to trade Vitek Vanacek, where they got an expansion. They didn't think Grubauer was going to be available, so that's not something they certainly banked on by any means. Of course, Brandon Saad wasn't able to be retained, but he did get a pretty fair value contract. The Blues got him at $4.5 million on a longer-term deal, and as much as the Avs probably would have been willing to pay that amount, it just wasn't going to fit. We're adding in these new contracts for Makar and Landeskog, and they're not far away from having to do McKinnon. It didn't leave enough room, and they would have liked, I think, to retain Saad, but I don't think they wanted to do that much term either. So at the end of the day, he gets himself a pretty good contract with the St. Louis Blues, and he moves on. And of course, Jonas Donskoi has gone to expansion. Ryan Graves has gone via trade that we just talked about. So there's a lot of familiar faces there that are out the door. We also had Pierre Bellemare leave via free agency. Darren Helms should be able to play a similar role that he did. Obviously be like your bottom 6, 3rd, 4th line center, kill some penalties, provide a little bit of physical play. So Bellemare departs. Soderberg is gone as well. So there's a lot of guys in that regard that are now off the team. And there's quite a few changes really for an Avalanche team that really, like I said, the last couple of years have had a lot of success. But when you don't get the success you want and you're tight up against the cap, a lot of difficult decisions have to be made, and Joe Sakic and his team certainly did that this offseason. Now, heading into the remainder of the offseason, we've got about 6 weeks to go before training camp. Do the Avalanche have any unfinished business? What should we expect from them between now and the time training camp starts? And to be honest, we may not see a whole heck of a lot. They've got all their main players signed. They don't have any outstanding contracts. At this point, they could always make a small trade or something, but I wouldn't suspect anything too substantial in that regard. But they do have some players that are eligible for contract extensions, and I do wonder that given the cap situation where it is and the nature of the contracts they had to do this offseason, if they might want to get ahead of this and start conversations around extension talks on one or two of these guys at least, or if, we'll see if they might decide to leave it more for in season or later into towards the end of the year. I don't know, but they got guys like Darcy Kemper, who they just acquired, has only got 1 year left. They paid a hefty price for him. To only have him for 1 year would be potentially a bad move, really. As much as they needed a guy and he could fit the bill, if he provides the kind of goaltending that they think he can, it's going to be great value. But if he turns around and leaves in a year after giving up a first rounder in Connor Timmins, that's going to hurt. So I would suspect they'll probably try to get ahead of that and try to sign him for at least a couple more seasons at similar value, maybe a little bit more than what he's making now, depending on what they can offer in that regard. Also, guys like Kadri and Burakovsky are also are eligible at least for extension. So I'm not sure exactly how they feel about that. They may want to take the wait and see approach with those guys. Hard to say, but that could also be some other business we see from the Avalanche this year between now and training camp. And of course, with all that said, are the Avalanche really, did they meet their objectives? Are they a better team? Are they a worse team? About the same? To be honest, I'm going to say they're about the same. I don't really see them being substantially better. I don't really see them being substantially worse. Like, it's kind of negligible in that respect. But they have changed their dynamic a little bit. And at the end of the day, maybe I think we might be able to say a little bit better. But one thing that we saw in the playoffs was the defense getting pushed around a lot. They've added a little bit more back there. Hopefully a healthy Eric Johnson can help. And then you throw in McDermott back there. That could be a big, strong pairing to help kind of do that, take care of that a little bit. Ryan Murray's not overly huge, but still he's not a smaller guy either, like a Jerard, for example. So they certainly add some experience, they add some size, they add some toughness back there. That should help. They Grubauer out, Kemper in. He theoretically should be able to break even in that regard, but you just don't know, right? Grubauer has been pretty awesome for them for the past year or so. And then up front, well, they lost a few players, but you know what? With what they've brought in, it should be about the same. So to me, I'm kind of leaning towards the same to slightly better. We'll have to see if the tweaks they've made are going to push them, be able to take a step further and be get that elusive cup here. I know odds makers are still having them heavily favored near the top of the NHL for a cup victory, so only time will tell. So let me know your thoughts on the Avalanche offseason. Do you think they've made the right moves to meet their objectives to take things to the next step? And we'll discuss that further down here in the comments. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We will keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis, as well as the rest of the videos in this series coming here as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.